Sorry, was not ready for that. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. As Michaela said, my name's Angie. I, along with a fabulous team of people, including Michaela, help run the New Ventures BC competition and all of our other programs. Let me just see if I can share my full screen here. Okay. So, yes, so welcome. So we've got, of course, the pitch talk today, and I'll be introducing Paul Broussard from Volition momentarily. First, I'll tell you a quick little bit about New Ventures BC, and we'll also introduce you to Nikki, who's here from Futurepreneur. She's just going to talk to you for a minute or two just about what Futurepreneur does, because they do some really great programming for startups, and we just wanted to kind of help share the word. So first, New Ventures BC, for those who don't know, we are a not-for-profit. Our primary mandate is to support BC tech startups, both in the form of education, like we're doing today, and also recognition to try and shine the light on the real promising tech ventures here in the province. We do that primarily through our competition, of which I know many of you have been in or are in. And today's talk will be a little bit, we'll focus on the companies going through our round 2.5 of our competition, but all the pitch talk today is also very transferable if you're just looking to up your game in pitching. So, you know, whether you're in that round or not, you'll get value. Other programs we run, we do a distance venture acceleration program. We have a bunch of our clients in that program here today as well. So hi, everyone. We also have a free online market validation training program. So if you want to validate your idea, work through your idea, you can go to our website and find the online program. And of course, we have our ISI grant program, which is a student job hiring grant. So you put in 50% of a student's salary and we'll match that 50% up to $5,000. So if you want details on any of that, feel free to reach out on Slack or chat or whatever works for you. The competition would not be anything without our sponsors. So I do want to take a moment to both acknowledge and thank them. So our lead partner, our title sponsor for the last 10 plus years has been Innovate BC, Crown Corporation of the province of British Columbia. Our gold sponsors, EY, Ernst & Young, Fasken, SFU BD School, and the SFU Sauder School of Business. Our silver sponsors are Vantech Angel Network, Volition, and Paul, of course, is here representing Volition. We're first time on board as a sponsor, so we're very pleased to have them this year. TELUS Ventures, and also new sponsoring this year is the CBRE High Tech Facilities Group. So they help people find office space, and they specialize in tech companies. And of course, our bronze sponsors, Ace Tech, BC Tech Association, Spring, and webnames.ca. So thank you to all of our sponsors. Like I said, if you have any questions around anything I've spoken about or want to reach out afterwards, here are all the different ways you can contact us. We will send out a very short survey for you to reply to just to get your feedback on the seminar right towards the end of the seminar. If you have a minute to just complete that, that would be really helpful for us. So thank you very much. Otherwise, first up, I'm going to pass the baton over to Nikki from Futurepreneur Canada, and she'll just tell you a little bit about what they do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angie. Firstly, can you hear me?
I can.
Everyone hear me okay? Awesome. So great to be here. Thank you so much to New Ventures BC and Angie and Michaela for having me on here today. I wanted to chat just a little bit about Futurepreneur. So my name is Nikki and I work for Futurepreneur based in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm so curious to learn where everyone's calling in from. But Futurepreneur is a national nonprofit organization that at the heart of what we do, our mandate is to help support young Canadian entrepreneurs to start their businesses. So the way that we do that is primarily by providing financing and mentoring programs to entrepreneurs between the age range of 18 to 39. So the financing comes in the form of a business loan. We loan out anywhere between a minimum of $3,000 up to a maximum of $60,000. And that financing can be really used to cover any startup costs that you might have when starting to launch your business, or simply as working capital. So having that cash in your bank account just to make sure that you have enough money there that your business is not going to become cash poor really quickly when you launch. A lot of the times that's the number one thing that we see businesses fail is simply lack of cash flow. And so our financing can be really used to help support that, and to really leverage as well for your business as in that first couple of years of operating. But the thing that I really think is really cool about our programs is that the financing comes hand in hand with a mentoring program. So every entrepreneur who goes through and receives financing from Futurepreneur is then also matched with a mentor, a one-on-one match with a business mentor who's going to work with you and your business for the first 2 years of operations. So they're really there in that first couple of years to help support you through any challenges that might come up. And we all do know that challenges come up in that first couple of years of business, and that mentor is really there to support and guide you through that, and to make your business as successful as it possibly can be. So that's really at the heart of what Futurepreneur does. We provide money and mentorship to help support young entrepreneurs start their businesses. We have a couple of different programs. We have our side hustle program, which is really designed for entrepreneurs that are starting a business on the side and want to keep their business on the side for the next couple of years. And then we have our startup program, which is our flagship program, which really supports entrepreneurs that starting a business and are just jumping all into it and wants to grow and scale their business as quickly as possible. Both programs consist of the financing and mentoring component. In addition to our core programs, we have a whole range of a kind of whole resource arm to what we do. So everything from workshops to kind of community-focused events that we're involved with, to some one-on-one business coaching and business mentoring. We do that also. So I wanted to jump off now. Thank you so much for the time. If you wanted to find out more, feel free to get in touch with me. Michaela has posted a link to my LinkedIn there and my email in the chat box. So feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to learn about the business that you are creating. So thank you so much.
Great. Thanks very much for joining us. Thank you. All right, so on to the main event. So we're really pleased to have Paul Broussard here, who's one of the co-founders of Volition. So I've known Paul for several years now. I was just thinking that Paul's done a lot for the startup community here the last while, but I would say one of the biggest things he's done is really help up the pitch game of companies. And he and his team have hosted, I'd love to hear how many you think you've done, Paul, but I'm going to guess hundreds and hundreds of pitch sessions, giving people pitch feedback, and you know, telling your story is really important. So I think it's been a really valuable component of the ecosystem here. So I'm going to read a little background on Paul, and then I will pass it over to Paul to take it away. So Paul is closing in on having 20 years of experience in entrepreneurship and has lots of experience in business development, fundraising, scaling, and market strategy, and of course is a master pitch and presentation coach. So he's going to share his tips today. He's also a great teacher and has a passion for knowledge sharing and helping others grow and succeed. Paul loves working with entrepreneurs and startups and gets really inspired and motivated by all the enthusiasm and innovation entrepreneurs bring. So, Paul, thank you for joining us, both as a sponsor this year and as an expert, and I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks, Angie. Appreciate it. I mean, it's our honor. We're really glad to be a sponsor and partner with New Ventures and the competition. I mean, it's a you know, I appreciate you saying the work we've been doing for the ecosystem, and it's we're incredibly passionate about it. And the New Ventures competition is also very important and a wonderful part of the ecosystem. So we're glad to take part and help. So thank you very much. And to answer your question, we're coming up on our 90th pitch night or pitch event with our global pitch event on the 17th, and then on the 30th we're doing our first ever virtual Women's Pitch Canada. So those will be, I believe, our 89th and 90th pitch events.
Wow,
that we're hosting of our own, and then we've hosted other people's as well. So yeah, it's getting there. It's pretty crazy to think about. So cool. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So welcome everybody to the Volition Pitch Masterclass. This is a special masterclass that we have designed for this New Ventures competition. It is a culmination of the masterclasses that we do run, but it's got a bit more of information and a bit more specific towards what we believe is companies both in Canada / BC and within the competition. So as Angie mentioned earlier, however, it should be useful no matter what stage you're at or where you're at in your pitching and business journey. So thank you again to New Ventures for having us. There we go. So as Angie mentioned, I am coming up on 20 years as an entrepreneur. I believe actually this September will be my 20th year. Within that, I have almost 15 years of pitching and fundraising experience. Throughout that time, taking a combination of my experience as well as the experience that has been gained through hosting so many pitch events and working with clients on their pitches and presentations, whether it be to general audience, to investors, to competitions. We've had the honor of working with a lot of companies that have been in the competition previously. So through all of that culmination of experience, have been able to form a lot of master tips and tricks and ways of building winning and clear and concise and compelling pitches and presentations. So as Angie mentioned, I am a co-founder and I'm a managing partner and lead advisor at Volition. So Volition elevates entrepreneurship through skill-based training, events and coaching for the global startup ecosystem and its supporters. We do that through things like e-courses and masterclasses for entrepreneurs, boot camps and workshops for organizations. We provide unique and startup-focused pitch events. Angie mentioned our pitch events that we run currently. Ours are a bit different than other ones where we don't have judgy judges. What we do differently is we provide a safe and comfortable environment for people to come in and practice and get practical experience and feedback from an expert feedback panel. So that we find that really helps a lot of people. And as a result, now we've seen over 5,000 people and over 750 companies pitch at our events. And it's really cool because we're starting to see some of those companies now in the competition, which is really, really neat. So they're all growing up, as I like to think of it. So we also provide expert one-on-one coaching and advisory services. And so I mentioned there earlier that we provide that for the global startup ecosystem. We did start here in Vancouver, and in the last 3 years, we have expanded to Calgary, Seattle, Amsterdam, Madrid, Lisbon, Dublin, and most recently Zurich, and are about to launch in Istanbul. A bit of a silver lining to the current situation out there with COVID and everything is that it has allowed us actually to expand even further globally with the ability to provide an acceptance of providing our services virtually. So it's been really cool to start working with. Even now, we just started working with an organization in Vietnam and another one in Zurich, and looking to continue to expand that. So what we're going to expect today, or what to expect and what you're going to learn is that we are going to go back to basics to start with that. We're going to be talking about starting with why, because it's such an integral and important part of your not only pitch and presentation, but of your business, and some around pitch structuring. And then there will be a small break, bio break, get a coffee, do what you need to do, give you 5 minutes or so for that. And then we're going to head into part 2, where we're going to talk about investor mindset and some of the top mistakes. And some of that is sprinkled throughout, but overall, all of it should flow well together, and not surprisingly should have good structure and flow, which is something that we're going to talk about today. What I want to say is that at its core, this masterclass and really learning how to pitch and present is really about communicating concisely and clearly and effectively and with purpose. So, having a purpose to what you're pitching and presenting is extremely important. So that's what we're going to talk a lot about today. So with that, let's go back to basics. So what I want to show you is in this slide, this is essentially to show you that a great pitch and presentation, good is having structure for sure. Absolutely, no problem. Some people can get away with having a good pitch just by scripting something out. But a great one is really to understand the mindset of your audience and the goals thereby that they have and that you have with that audience. And also adding in one part story. So this is a great pitch and presentation is 3 parts, which is structure, story, and mindset. And to go along with that, what we tend to find, or what we have found over time, is that, like I said, you could totally get away with coming in and scripting something up and have a structured pitch. But what we often find more often than not is that when people do that and they're trying to follow a script, they have a tough time following the script. Most people are not naturally actors. Most people are not naturally writers and can't necessarily script things. And what we've discovered over time is most people aren't robots. I believe that most of us are human. And so we don't generally work in just such confines. What we tend to find to be a lot easier is that we all know our story. We all know where this came from. So we know our past, present, future. We know the who, what, where, why, when, how. And when you combine those things into a story and make that the basis for your pitch and presentation, it actually becomes a lot more natural and engaging and allows people to connect with you better. So I'm just going to go back to basics again and almost, something we learn in elementary school, but, talking about storytelling. So the storytelling component is so important. And talking about what I was talking about before, and along with this, to give you some perspective on this, Natalie Portman on Masterclass.com, she has a masterclass on acting. I know that's not exactly what we're talking about today, but I just want to give you a perspective on this, is that even she says in her masterclass, like, look, the reality is that I don't go into this and 100% follow the script. What I do is I develop the narrative. I understand the narrative and I understand the story that the character and the script is trying to tell. And most of the time, my lines, I just ad-lib them or I create them because I'm following the overall story and the structure of that story and going with what I believe that the character would go with. It's a similar sense here, right? So we're trying to tell a story and draw people in and engage with them and get them to connect with us. So there's a lot of reasons that, in addition, that storytelling is so important. One is that it creates an emotional investment, right? So I always like to relate to the old adage of, we all, almost everyone, I think, has that uncle or aunt or grandfather or grandmother that is the amazing storyteller. And you might recount times that I know for myself, I can sit down and recount times that my grandpa Hauk, we used to sit down and he's just this incredible storyteller. And no matter what story he was telling you, he would draw you in. And he just had this like magnetic, people would call it a magnetic personality. But it was just that he was a really good storyteller. And part of that was that when he was telling the story, he drew you in through an emotional investment. It seemed more real because you were there with him, no matter what the story was. Along with that story, especially if it's a more personalized story, if you're able to build that in, you're able to build trust. Now, especially when, if you're pitching, say in a live scenario, I know that's a bit tough right now, and I do have some tips and tricks for virtual pitching later on. But if you're on webcam or you're in live in person, the cool thing is that you can get a sense of instilling trust by the person being able to see you. And especially in a live situation, people can see your body language, they can see the look on your face, and that tells a lot. And when you're telling a story, you're actually able to express a lot more of your character and who you are. In addition, you can get into the opportunity because you're telling a story of what that opportunity looks like. I will tell you more about that in a little bit. And at the end of the day, it becomes more memorable. So I'll give you an example. Some of the best pitches I've heard over the years, and even some of the best that I've ever done, I can give you a perspective on this is, if you go into a competition, let's say of 10 companies, and I remember a time that I did this, going into a company or a competition of 10 companies pitching. And you've got 8 or 9 of them, which is usually the case. 8 or 9 of them come in, they've got a scripted pitch. It sounds robotic. They're just spewing off a bunch of numbers. It's like, well, this is the market size, and this is how it does it, and then this is the number, and then this is the next number. And in our business, we call it steamrolling, essentially with data. The challenge at the end of the day is that almost nobody's going to be able to remember all of those statistics. Almost no one is going to be able to remember everything you just said. But what they will remember is if you turn it around and you tell a story, they may not remember all of those little particular numbers and statistics that you stated, but they may remember the story. So this might sound like something like, afterwards when the investors are talking, if you're at an investor competition, pitch competition, and let's say a Vantech Angel Network event, and our partners there, you might go up and pitch, and then after you leave and they're all talking to each other, they might say, yeah, I don't remember exactly that person's name, and I don't remember all the little details, but I remember, the thing they said about this, and I remember the story they told. There was this entrepreneur that said this, right? I really need to go connect with them because that really resonated with me, right? And this is really important as well, because in a lot of these competitions, a lot of these pitch events, what happens is, everybody gets busy. There's usually a networking component, but not everybody can get to everybody. Sometimes people have to leave early. So what you want to hope for is that they will remember you and also take that effort to reach out. You don't miss that opportunity. And sometimes we only have one opportunity. So we have to make the best of it while we can. So it's important to be memorable. And a great way to do this is by storytelling. I'm not going to play the video here, but I would encourage you guys, if you are going to download the PDF, which Michaela and the team have put up available, or you can take a screenshot. I think even in GoToMeeting, I get the impression that your guys' screen, you should be able to click a button to easily take a screenshot. But I would highly recommend watching this video. And the reason I say that is that there's actually science behind storytelling. I guess that's not surprising, but some of the science is that storytelling is actually more natural within human language. Like I was saying before, it's not natural to script things. It's not natural to try to come up with a script and repeat it word by word. What is more natural is the storytelling component. And the bonus of that is that it also, the science behind it is that it also creates or has potential to create dopamine, which helps with focus and recall. So that's part of the storytelling. It has the ability to create oxytocin, which can actually relate and create trust and likability. And then endorphins, which actually helps with relaxation and personality. It allows you to maybe instill some humor and personality into the story or into your pitch, because you're not so concentrated on repeating something word by word. You know the story, and so now you're just telling the story. And even if you miss something, the story will still make sense, and it's okay. I'll give you some great examples. So as Angie mentioned from the top, and as I was mentioning before, is that at Volition, we've hosted a whole lot of pitch events, and we have the honor now that we're hosting them globally. Our next pitch event on June 17th is a global pitch event. It's our second one of that type. And we are seeing companies now at that event. We saw companies from Ukraine, from Portugal, from Britain, from all over the world. And then we're seeing companies all across Canada with our Across Canada events. Our last event was a virtual pitch US, where we saw companies from all across the US. But one thing seems to be a common denominator. And the common denominator is that the winners of every one of those events, almost every one of those events, usually ends up having an incredible story. And we see this as evidenced in the chat box. And one of the things I actually have learned to appreciate by being able to do our events through Zoom and through virtual is you get to see the chat and the interaction and engagement that people have together while they're pitching or after their pitches. And here's some of the comments that we're seeing in the chat from the people who, or to the people that are winning. Things like, that is a wonderful story, great story, love the story. Stories help you to generate intrigue. Such a valuable tool out of that story. You know, what is evident here is that people get it. They have a better understanding of what it is that you're pitching and telling them. And ultimately, the people who go on to win are usually the ones that had the most compelling, clear, and concise story that was memorable. At the end, at our pitch events, we have 8 companies per pitch event. They pitch for 3 minutes each. So by the end, you know, it's been a couple hours. And so the ones that win end up being the most memorable ones. And that's what you want as well. So a great way to do that is to start with why. So I want to give you a little story. So this actually is a very relevant and brand new story that just happened. Recently, at our most recent pitch event was a virtual pitch US event, as I was just saying. And a company that actually ended up winning the event is a company called Mint Money Management. And what was really, really cool was they came on and they started with a story. They started with a story, and the story sounded something like this, which was, yeah, when I was a little kid, my brothers and sisters and our mom taught us how to manage money, and we would earn money by doing chores. We would earn money by doing daily tasks, by doing our homework, and she would work with us on how to budget that money and do things. And then when we wanted to do activities or order dinner or do anything along those lines, we had to budget out of our money to do that. So for example, to order dinner, it would cost us $1 from our budget. And so he recounted that at the end, one summer, they said, okay, well, we're going to order dinner. Do you want to order dinner this Friday? And he and his brothers and sisters ended up saying, no, because it costs too much. And so what he really wanted to do then to take that, he said that gave us the idea for Mint Money Management. And then I think it's Mini Money Management, my apologies. And they were actually able to turn that into a business where they're now taking a similar curriculum and teaching it in elementary schools. So they're teaching the teacher and allowing that curriculum of a similar program built from that experience into elementary schools. And I'm sure we can all agree that financial management is extremely important. I wish I had something like that when I was younger. And I have 3 kids, so I think it's something extremely important for them. And I don't know how many of you in the audience right now have kids, but I'm sure all of you are probably like, oh, geez, that would be really, really good, right? Ultimately, what he did is he started with a story. He built connection and said, here's where this came from, and here's where it is now. And he started with his why, which was really important. And at the end, I would argue that a large part of the reason that he won the event was the highest voted out of the audience, was probably because a lot of them related to the story and understood the why. And so that is where I want to head now. So I'm sure many of you probably know the name Simon Sinek and have probably heard the statement of people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. On the slide here, it says people won't truly buy into a product, service, movement, or idea until they understand the why behind it. In many of his videos on YouTube, with the Start With Why, he will summarize that into people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do. So to give you perspective on that, he gives examples of, how come the Wright brothers were able to win the air race originally, why, as opposed to a different person who was doing the same thing as them and had the same access to technology and information and people, and actually had more capital than The Wright brothers did, but the Wright brothers were able to succeed because they had their why built in. People were willing to help them to achieve the goal because they bought into the why, as opposed to the other person got into it for the fame and fortune. So as soon as the Wright brothers figured it out, the other person just gave up and said, well, that's it. Whereas he could have said, wow, that's amazing. Maybe we should combine our efforts and we can keep improving on this. But instead just gave up because he didn't get the fame and fortune. There wasn't the why behind it. And a lot of companies have this. I would highly recommend, if you haven't done so before, go and watch the Start With Why videos from Simon Sinek. They're very powerful. He's one of my favorite speakers. And it is very powerful and informational stuff that will really help you. And he gives perspective on why this works for Apple, why it worked for Martin Luther King, and many, many more companies and organizations. But it's also important here within what we're doing, within our businesses and with our pitches and presentations, so that people can better connect. They buy what you do, not what you do. So I'm going to give you an example. In this example, I'm going to set up some context. And the context is that there is a global investor network called Keiretsu. And Keiretsu is kind of a later stage investor event. They have events in chapters all over the world, and they have a chapter here in Vancouver. And so this was probably, I'm going to say, about 2 or 3 years ago. Again, I don't remember exactly the time, but I remember the story. But to give you the example, the context was that this is an investor event, happens on a monthly basis. The companies that are coming to pitch are usually a bit further along. Normally, they're looking for bridge round funding and heading into Series A, or they've just started their Series A, and they're looking for that first round of institutional funding as a result. So as a result, we usually would see later stage companies, companies that are a bit further along, and so on and so forth. So have a good semblance of traction and so on and so forth. But most of the companies come in, they would have pretty good pitches and presentations. A lot of them actually could use a lot of work and could be improvements. But I want to give you an example of one of my favorites that I still remember as of this day. I don't remember exactly every little detail, but I want to give you the example by actually giving you the pitch, because it was so memorable that I still remember it fairly well today. And so give me a moment, I'm going to go into scene. But essentially set it up is that the pitcher entrepreneur named Rebecca, she's pitching her company, and the audience at these events is normally, I'm going to say, anywhere between their 40s and 70s. So it's a little bit of an older crowd generally. And it's mostly all fairly serious investors. So to kind of set it up for you. So Rebecca enters the room. She says, "Hello, my name is Rebecca. And 2 years ago, my father passed away from a brain tumor. But it wasn't the brain tumor that my father passed away from. It was actually the subsequent surgeries that they had to do for him to remove more of the brain tumor affected area because they weren't able to get it all the first time. This is extremely common, and the more surgeries that people have, especially to brains, the more risky it is, and the more risk there is that they may pass away as a result. There's risk of infection, risk of serious injury, and so much more. There's also an extreme risk to the medical system, in which it costs the US healthcare system almost $200 million per year. I felt, as a 20-year entrepreneur in the health science space, that there could be a better way. There must be a better way. And so we have created a novel solution using a unique form of scorpion venom to be able to inject into the affected area of the brain and highlight 99.89% of the affected area, allowing doctors to remove more successfully the first time and reduce the amount of return surgeries and return risk. thereby reducing the cost of the healthcare system by upwards of $20 million per year. We have an amazing team. Our team has all at least 10 to 20 years of experience in the health science sector. We've been active in Seattle and have been working with the University of Seattle and many other organizations, and are now on phase 3 of our clinical trials. We're looking for $2 million to go into the next phase of clinical trials and eventually exit out to big pharma. We've already raised 1 million of the 2 million and are looking to close out the round by the next couple months. Whatever we raise in the next 2 months is going to be matched by so-and-so, by the Bill Gates Foundation, I think it was, or something like that. And we're looking for your investment to help us close out this round. Who would like to join us in reducing the risk of brain tumor surgeries? Now, what I'm going to guess, and usually, I mean, I can't see your faces, but what I'm guessing is that you guys all heard and picked up some inherent things. And usually when I tell that story or I use that pitch, I would then have a conversation with the people that I am teaching a pitch and presentation to. And normally the feedback that I hear out of that is that they picked up some inherent things. Without overtly saying how much experience she has in the field or being, going to in extreme detail about her and the team. And as you can imagine, she had slides that were very clear and concise behind her. She was able to say very inherently, here's how much experience I have, right? The inherent thing that came along with that is that, okay, when she said she has 20 years experience as a health science entrepreneur, oh, that has built-in legitimacy. She doesn't have to talk about how legitimate she is in the field. She's already told us. She's also told us what stage she's at and what traction she has. She told us about the team. She told us about the opportunity. She connected with us through a story. The dramatic pause at the beginning, I didn't insert that. That was actually hers. And that was to give everybody time to inflect. And why is that important? Let's talk again about the audience that she was pitching to. So the audience is between 40 and 70 years old. They're in the investor category, right? The reality is that she probably knew that a lot of the audience that she's pitching to or presenting to is within an age category where they might have been, in many cases, directly affected or indirectly affected by something similar. So now there's a sense of connection. There's a sense of empathy, right? She builds a connection through that. She builds trust. She also instilled inherently her why. We picked up on it without even her having to say it. Why is that important? It's important because now you and I both know that she's in this for the long haul. When times are tough, she's not just going to give up. When things don't go the way that they're hoping, she's not just going to give up. Her and her team are in this because they're passionate about the why. But it was built into her pitch and presentation. We got it. She didn't have to overtly over-explain it. It was very clear, concise, and we knew through her pitch exactly what she had done, what she's doing, or what they have done, what they're doing, and what they want to do. And so it was one of the very few cases at that angel investment group where I actually saw people get out their checkbooks and start writing her checks. It was very rare that that would ever happen. And she was very able to close her round very quickly as a result. So what we've done now is we've just sort of reverse engineered that, right? And so this is important for us to reverse engineer the story. So, what is your why? How are you going to solve the problem? What are the milestones necessary to get there? What resources do you need to make this happen? Is there something that you should highlight, particularly in the pitch? I like to teach what I call the best foot forward principle. And the best foot forward principle is where, if you have something extreme and amazing that you really want to highlight. I'll give you a great example where I was working with a client and they came to me and said, well, yeah, I haven't been having a lot of success pitching. da 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 da, and we went through the whole thing. And then throughout our conversation, all of a sudden he dropped on me that they had done just over $1 million in revenue in the last 2 years. And I was like, "You've done what?" And I said, that wasn't in your pitch anywhere. This is the first time I've heard of that. Why didn't you bring that up sooner? And so particularly his product was something that maybe would have a lot of doubt at the beginning, where people would go, well, I'm not sure people would like that. Are they actually going to buy that? How many times are they going to come back and buy more? And so I said, well, actually, let's put your best foot forward and actually start with that highlight. Hi, my name's Elliot, and in the past 2 years, we've done $1.2 million in revenue. Here's what we're doing. The great thing about that is it already breaks down the barriers. It breaks down the barriers in the audience's mind, especially for investors, because now you're already inherently telling them, oh, this person already has sales. They have traction. There's something to this. It removes a large part of the doubt that they might have. You have to remember, investors usually are going into pitches already having decided not to invest. So it's our job as pitchers and presenters to convince them otherwise and de-risk the opportunity as much as possible for them to have a next conversation with us. The next part of reverse engineering is, what will the ask achieve? So I always try to follow a strict rule is, what does the ask achieve, or what are you going to achieve with the ask? The common answer is sales, marketing, and R&D. But it needs to be a bit deeper than that. What are you actually going to achieve? How does this help you hit the next milestone? How does it help you achieve a major milestone? What is it actually going to help you achieve? Is it going to multiply your revenue? Is it going to help you add new members of the team? Sure, but what is that also going to achieve? Adding those new members is going to do this, and it's going to achieve more revenue, more users. What is it going to help you do? So it's really important for you to think of, what story can you tell to strengthen your pitch? Can you use that to generate intrigue and instill trust, as I was saying before? The picture even up on the screen right now is of our friend Andre from a company called Roblox Tools, which is actually one of the first pitchers we ever had and one of our first ever clients that we helped with their pitch and presentation. When they first started, they came in, it was actually Andre's dad that started pitching, Andy and Andre. They came in, Andy came in very, just like I'm telling you, came in very scripted, trying to remember every word, very robotic, and they sell smart tools. Their company is around smart tools. So then one day I just said to Andy, well, what's your story? Where did this come from? How did you create something so fascinating and unique and incredible? And he said, well, I've been a mechanical engineer for this many years, and I always struggle. And then, I have family members that struggle with the tools, and I just see it as a common thing. And that's kind of where this came from. And I said, Andy, you should tell people that, right? Because now I connect with that. I go, well, yeah, I'm not great with tools either. I wish I had a tool that kind of told me how to use it. And auto adjusted, say a drill that auto adjusts based on what you're drilling into, and give those stories of how the product is used and where it came from. So we were able to teach his son and go through all of this methodology, and then now his son goes out, raises money, is able to win competitions, has won competitions as a result, and has thanked us for the work that we've done with them. And it's actually as simple as we just taught them how to reframe how they're pitching it into more of a story, a narrative that was clear, concise, and compelling, and memorable. So how do we do this? And what I wanted to say actually really quickly was that all of this at the end, part of this is we also want to create a fear of missing out, right? So if we have this clear, concise, compelling story where people feel like, wow, I really remember that, and I should be part of this. I need to be part of this somehow. I want to help, right? I think most of us can probably say that as we've been in our entrepreneurial journey, most of us encounter more often than not that people just want to help. So we need to frame it and structure it in a way that people understand how they can help and understand where this comes from. Again, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. That's the buy-in portion. That's the trust. It's the engagement and the connection. So at Volition, over the years, what we've done is we've built an actual pitch structure, a format for this. And I will say, absolutely, there's other formats, there's other structures you can find online, there's all sorts of things that you can do. And this is our way of doing it. We call it Pasillas. And Pasillas helps you exactly to give you a structure or a framework to help you build your pitch and presentation, and then actually formulate it more into a narrative story, and give you a framework to help you build something that is clean, concise, and compelling. Oh, whoops. Yes, I think I already had that. So again, why is this structure needed? Because it helps you, again, memorize without a script, and therefore you can be more natural, meaning you can be you. And I think the reality is what I want to remind people is that, especially at early stages, a lot of time, and it's my experience, and most investors will tell you this, is that more often than not, they're investing in you, not necessarily the business. Yeah, they may have an interest in the business. They may feel like they can help. Often they want to know that they can help in some way or feel like they can. But more often than not, they're investing in you. And so a great way to make that happen and have the conversations happen is so you can be you and that they can connect with you. It's to maintain attention and having good flow to do that, not jumping all over the place and people trying to understand, like, okay, well, what was he saying there? What were they saying there? What was she talking about? I don't really get how that all connects together. I'm not really sure. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard pitches that jump all over the place. And at the end, I've heard feedback from panelists, from judges, from investors where they go, I didn't really get it. I don't really understand the business. I don't really understand why they're doing this. It didn't really tick the boxes for me. My friend Thalzel from Vantech Angel Network, she uses a version of that, which is fill her buckets. Many investors that I talk to, they're looking for you to tick the boxes. One of the things I like to tell people is the more boxes you can tick, the more it de-risks the opportunity. So the more boxes you can tick, the more it de-risks. So we want to try to do that as best as we can through this. So for a moment, I want to take you back. Many of you will probably recognize this. This is the conventional story arc. Many of this probably learned this in elementary school. And I don't want to oversimplify you guys, but I want to give you some context of how our Pasillas structure was created. And so we said, okay, well, and in my experience over the years, if we said, well, if we found that most of the most compelling and winning pitches were around a narrative story, then what is the basis of storytelling? And so this story arc format has existed for many, 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 many years. And it works. We know it works. It's what they teach in school, and it's what most writers of books, movies, and television use. Television shows use. So, and it starts off with setting up the intro, setting the scene, right? So in our case, what's the problem? Setting up the scenario, the rising action. Okay, so cool, you know all this. So what's the solution to all of it? The climax. If we imagine for a moment now, we've replaced the climax with opportunity. So what's the opportunity in this? How do you make money? Or if you look at it from an investor's perspective, how does the investor make money, right? So showing how you're going to make money through a money model or a business model or both, means that you're one step closer to potentially making money, therefore one step closer for the investor to make money or a return on their investment. And at the end of the day, what's the resolution, or what's the ask that you have that's going to help you get there? And what I want to recount is that in terms of the opportunity, a lot of people forget that the opportunity is nothing without the team. So quite often, one of the things that many people will hear is why you, why this, why now? You hear this quite often in the investor community. And it's not untrue, even though it's a bit of a cliche. Some people might think it's a bit too cliche. I can tell you that it comes up over and over again. And then, of course, always make sure you end with your ask and include your contact info. Even this came up yesterday. I worked with a client and had an initial call with them, and they did their pitch and presentation to me. And then they didn't include their contact information at the end. And they asked me to get back to them with some information, and I didn't have their email address. It wasn't even in their slide deck. And I was just like, wow, oh my God. Make sure to include that. Now I'm just going to go back for a second, and I just want to give you an example of where, a really simplified version of this, where you might hear this, right? So, I'm sure many of us have watched Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, and that's made for TV. It's not realistic in the sense of like actual real life pitching and presenting at competitions or pitch events or in networking situations. But how you might hear this, for example, is, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. One day, actually, they won't even say that. So they'll say something along the lines of, one day I was doing a thing happened, and I felt like there must be a better way to solve this problem, or I have an issue and I can resolve this. So I built a solution, whether it's software or physical product. I made a thing to solve my problem, my issue. I started talking to other people and started recognizing that more people than just me had that issue, and that it wasn't just me. And they started asking me for this solution or product. So I started making the product for them and realizing that people would pay to have that product or solution. So now I need money to make more of that product or solution. That's the story arc. I just did it very simply, but this isn't uncommon. I'm sure almost all of us have probably heard something along those lines at some point in our lives somewhere. And so this is totally common, and it follows that story arc. I didn't just make it up. That is something that happens all the time. So what we've done is we've converted that into what we call Pasillas. And quite simply, Pasillas starts with a problem. And then, as I say to most people, even Psychology 101, if I say to most of you, here's a problem, psychologically, I'm betting most of you would go, okay, and what's the solution to that problem? It's natural. It's natural that when you're presented with a problem, the next thing you want to hear is the solution. Once you've built up the problem and solution, it moves into the opportunity. So great. How are you going to make money from this? Or what does this actually present as an opportunity? And like I said, that needs to include you and the team. Technically, this opportunity probably doesn't exist without you and the team, especially at the early stages, right? Especially if it's connected with a why and that passion part. And then ultimately at the end, what's the ask? So some of the things I want to relate to you is that, the opportunity is extremely important. And like I said, it's about how you're going to make money. How are you going to find growth? How are you going to get market or market penetration? And what's beautiful when we teach clients this and when we work with people on this or do master classes and we see them afterwards and they start getting out there and they start practicing and they start formulating this and putting into practice, it's amazing to watch the evolution of them actually turning their entire pitch into a story. It's actually quite amazing. And then we find more often than not that those are the ones that are the most memorable, win the competitions, get the investments. And so it's pretty amazing. So in talking about the problem, one of the things I want to relate to you guys is, and I'm sure most of us have probably heard this before, but we really need to apply the KISS principle here. So keep it stupid simple. Try to avoid over-explaining the problem. We hear this quite often. This actually happened at the US virtual pitch event that we did recently, where a company came in, they started their pitch and presentation, but it's a 3-minute pitch, and they spent almost 2 minutes talking about the problem. And the feedback from everyone in the chat and from the panelists was, yeah, we got the problem within the first 15 seconds. right? You didn't probably need to spend more than 30 seconds on it. And you could have spent the rest of the pitch actually talking about the opportunity, the team, your product, your solution, and getting to the ask. And the result of their pitch was they actually didn't get to their ask. They ran out of time. And so they weren't actually able to get to their ask. Now, the challenge with that is that they miss an opportunity to get their ask out there and find the help. And when we've got 70 or 80 people per event, you never know who is in the audience and who can help you. And so missing out that chance or that opportunity to put out your ask and get help with it is a huge lost opportunity. And opportunity loss is not something we want when we're trying to build a startup. So prove that you're solving a real problem. There's an old adage that a lot of investors will say, which is, if I had an issue, a medical issue, or I had a headache, how are you the pill that's going to solve that? How are you the medicine to that challenge, right? So if you try to frame it in that sense, you can probably describe it pretty simply and not overcomplicate it. So try not to over-explain. One of the ways that I really want to express to you is, look for opportunities on how you can validate the problem. So how do you validate that you've actually discovered that this is a problem with more people than just you? So maybe, you can say that, I've talked to this many people. Legitimize it further to say, yeah, here's a problem. And look, I've talked to 1,000 other people and they've said that they also have the same issue. And therefore, we're creating a solution to solve that problem and people are willing to pay for it. Or if it's a freemium thing or whatever, what does that look like? And then, of course, how does your solution or approach meet the need? So describe that solution from the customer's perspective. Address the market doubt. One of the best ways that I ever see this done is if you can approach the solution and you can tell it even from the customer's point of view, or tell a user story or a customer story. If you're able to do that, I see a lot of pitches where they'll say, yeah, here's the problem, here's the solution, oh, and here's a demo. And what I'll often say is, well, why didn't you just use the demo to show your solution? Use that customer story, right? So if you can say, yeah, here's the problem. And oh, by the way, we have a customer that we're already working with that we're solving this problem for. If you can say their name, even better. So here's the customer we're working with, and here's the example. Here's a case study almost of them and how we solved their problem. Oh, and by the way, we have 10 other customers that we're doing the same thing for, and they're paying us for it. Ba-da, right? I think you'll probably agree that most people, you would probably be quite impressed by that, especially depending on how long you've been around, right? If you've been able to achieve this in a year or 2 years, that's some good traction depending on the type of business. And B2B enterprise type software, that's a pretty good process. So, that's very impressive, and you're going to inherently break down a lot of the doubts, right? So you're going to address market doubt. And that's what I was talking about before, is if you can address that from the outset and say, look, we already have customers, if that's possible. Or even if you're not there yet, like we have letters of interest, or we have some pilots that we've started talking to, anything to help you validate and legitimize that this is a real thing, and tell people what stage you're at is extremely important. So what does the solution look like, and how does it solve the problem? And then, the opportunity, like I said, is what's the business model, or what's the revenue model? What's the money model? How do you make money, or how does the company sustain itself or become revenue producing? Where, depending obviously what stage you're at. So what does that look like? What is your unfair advantage? And some people, I know a lot of people tend to kind of overthink that, but maybe the unfair advantage is something as simple, and that's fine. But maybe it's something as simple as, look, I have 5 years of market experience. This is my second startup. I've got previous experience. We've got an incredible team that has industry experience, right? There's a lot of ways to position that, but finding some way to position it and at least stating it, what you believe is your unfair advantage, is extremely helpful. Any proven traction you might have. And of course, look for ways of being relevant. So what is the relevance of it all? How do you be relevant? And then please, 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 always have an ask. It is a rule. I hope that you all follow the rule. Always have an ask. Be specific about what that ask is, right? So if you need a mentor, if that's your most important thing, whatever's the most important, go for it. I even recommend the order of M&M, which is mentors, network, money. Network includes things like advisors, partners, customers. Money is the next thing, right? So what I can tell you right now is a great mentor who is in it to help you and guide you and your path to success. That's a solo relationship. You know, network, the better and more relationships that you can build. I can tell you that a lot of my fundraising experience and success has been in building network and building relationships, and lowering those barriers. The larger and more extensive your network, and almost to an extent your personal brand, the more you can build that up, the easier you're going to be able to get to the money, the more connections you're going to have, that when you are fundraising or looking for help on something, you're going to be able to find it. What I mean by being specific, I'll give you some examples, right? So I hear a lot of pitches and people will end their pitch with saying, I'm looking for an advisor. I'm guessing most of you probably inherently right away went, well, what kind of advisor? Exactly that. So be specific. Are you looking for a business advisor, a technical advisor, a marketing advisor? Be specific about what kind you're looking for, or specific connections you're looking to make, or if it's particular customers. Tell me what those customers look like, who examples might be, right? So we're looking for connections to customers like this one, this type, this customer. And more often than not, in that case, you might get people in the audience that say, well, you know, I don't know anybody at that company, but I know somebody at a company that's similar. Would that work? Yeah, please connect me with them. That would be amazing. And then even furthermore, for money, again, be specific. How much money? You don't have to put for how much. I would never, in my opinion, and most investor advice that I've received over the years has been, don't put for how much equity or anything like that. Just put how much you're raising and the use of funds. How are you going to make that money work? And don't be afraid to put the amount that you need, that you actually need. A friend of mine, Anthony, gave me a great analogy that I like to use, which is, you know, a lot of people are a bit tentative about asking for the amount that they actually need. They're scared by the number. You know, the bigger the number, like, ooh, okay, I don't know if I can ask for that. Don't be afraid to ask for what you actually need. Most investors really just want to hear about how you're going to make that money work. So whether it's 100,000, whether it's 1,000,000, whether it's 2,000,000, it doesn't really matter. A number is a number and zeros are just zeros. It's still the same amount of work, and it's still money, and money is there to be put to work. That's what the investment is for. It's not to buy you a new car. It's not to get you a fancy office, hopefully. It's not to hire people you don't need and buy things you don't need for the business. It's there to be put to work and hopefully multiply your efforts and get a return on that investment in some way. So it's not about the amount, it's about how you make it work. So the analogy that he gave me was, you know, he'd rather hear somebody say, here's how much I need for a ticket to Toronto, not asking for the amount of money you need for a ticket to Winnipeg, and then coming back and saying, now I need more money because now I need to get from Winnipeg to Toronto. Let's get it done and over with. Let's put that money to work and make it happen. And as I always say, as I say to a lot of people, is, like I said, always have an ask. Having an ask is the difference between being an entrepreneur and being an wantrepreneur. So if you don't want to be a wantrepreneur, make sure you have an ask. Always have an ask. If we're an entrepreneur, you need help with something. don't be afraid to ask, and always have an ask. Again, Michaela has put the slides in the chat section, I think it was, for you guys to download. And I don't know if she's going to send it out afterwards, but one way or another, you can definitely get the slides. But
yeah,
or
you
can
website too, Paul. And
yeah, perfect. Great. But also, you know, just to give you some examples, if you want to take a screenshot as well, these are some great examples of people using storytelling to tell their message and pitch or present. So these are some great examples that I'd like to share with you. And as promised, I'm going to take a moment to let everybody take a short break. I know I definitely am going to go get a coffee. So everybody take 5 minutes and we'll be back at 2:41.
Hey everyone, Michaela here from New Ventures. I just wanted to remind you that if you have any questions for Paul, you can message them to us in the question box and he'll answer a few of them at the end of the presentation. Thanks.
And we're back. Hopefully everybody had a good, quick little break. Thanks for waiting. So moving on. So earlier I mentioned that some of the language that a lot of investors will use is about ticking the boxes. And as I mentioned, ticking the boxes is de-risking the opportunity, or at least to the best of your ability. So ultimately, it's about trying to fill the gaps, enhance your presentation to the best of your ability, and compel them to have a next conversation, or get to the conversation. You know, obviously pre-COVID, a lot of my language was around, right, trying to get them to the coffee, the proverbial coffee. Things are obviously a bit up in the air right now, but you're trying to get them to the virtual coffee, as it were, and conversation, so you can take it from there. But it's about developing that relationship, instilling trust, and making sure that you've fulfilled as much as you can to de-risk the opportunity and compel them to that next conversation. So, you know, a lot of ways to do this is to clarify, you know, and help you ask yourself, what have you done? What are you currently doing? What do you want to achieve? Brainstorming your stories. So what is your why, your journey, your about you and your team? What are the common questions that maybe you can answer ahead of time? What are the major milestones that you've had, or did you have a BFF that you can share, a best foot forward? Almost nothing I find is more powerful than a customer story or user story, right? Even if you don't have a customer yet, you know, tell us about the journey that they would go through, or if you have a user journey that you can put us through, and continue that story. What's your, you know, what's your future look like in terms of path to scaling? What's your positioning in the market? And then ultimately making sure that you have stated what state you're in, what stage you're in. So are you at early stages? Do you have growth? Do you have clear traction that you can provide? Any traction is good traction. The reality is you have to remember that investors know how hard it is. They're not dumb in that sense. We know how hard it is, all of us, to build a company, to be an entrepreneur. There's a lot of ups and downs, and traction is traction. So any amount of traction, you know, it's one big step, right? So don't discount that. And then, of course, if you have a proven model or proven revenue, then of course that's going to help de-risk and tick those boxes as well, because now you can show them that, hey, there's proof behind this. One of the things that's going around a lot right now, our advisor Kathleen just had an AMA Ask Me Anything interview a couple weeks ago with my business partner Melanie, and you know, one of the things she said, she's a VC investor, and one of the things she said has really stuck with me, which is, you know, now more than ever, investors are looking to invest in proof, not promise. So, you know, that doesn't mean it's completely out of the running to be able to have an investment in something that's more promissory, but investors ultimately are looking for proof. What is the proof that there's something behind this, rather than just the promise? So how can we show them that, and how can we de-risk in the opportunity and tick their boxes as a result? So I'll give you a quick review or view on what we call cocktail napkin economics. And on our team, some of you might have been part of his earlier session, but our advisor Chris Stairs did an earlier session with New Ventures talking about financials and money modeling and projections. And so one of the things he teaches and works with our clients on and does masterclasses on is on cocktail napkin economics, and as well as the minimum viable revenue plan. And so a great way of positioning this is give you an example. You know, this is Sally, our customer in Portugal, in Toronto, in Seattle, doesn't really matter. and we have 10 more customers just like them. This is how our solution has changed their business, how it's changed their life. This is how much we make per customer. So this is how much this customer is paying us. Therefore, these are our projections. So if we were to get, we have, this many customers now, this is what they're paying us. And based on our current traction and our current averages and what we're doing, we can get this many customers in this much time. Therefore, to get the amount of dollars we need this many dollars to get 10x the customers we have, for example, like this customer. And with these funds, we will do this. This is what we're going to achieve with that money. Now, some of the other cocktail napkin economics might be depending on the type of business you're in. And I can't tell you because it's variable depending on the type of business. And I can certainly recommend that if anybody's interested in learning more, they can book a session with Chris, or they can attend one of our upcoming masterclasses in that. But some of these things might include like how much money per customer, what's your cost per customer, what's your cost of acquisition, and what are the dollars or numbers that you've discovered over time. So it might even be like, oh, okay, well, we originally started with this, but we've since discovered this. And through that discovery process, now we're able to reposition and get more customers. So it's really good in positioning, but again, you're de-risking the process. One of the things, or the opportunity, one of the things I like to really tell people or tell our clients is that at the end of the day, it's not necessarily that you need to know everything that you're doing. Let's be real. Most of entrepreneurship is about testing. It's like a big science experiment. It's about having a hypothesis, testing it, coming into a conclusion. Either the conclusion worked or it didn't. And you take from that and you learn, you adjust, you reposition, sometimes you fully pivot, and you move on from there. And that takes you on your journey towards success. Investors know this too. And so the reality is that if you can tell them like, look, this is where we are, this is what we found, what they ultimately want to know is having confidence in you that you have a plan, that you have a plan on how you're going to get there. Understandably, you might have to make adjustments. You might have to change a little bit, do small pivots, big pivots. Well, what you ultimately want to do is instill in them the confidence. And again, I just want to be clear that investors to me isn't always necessarily just for money. Could be connections for knowledge, could be connections for connections, could be somebody that can help you out in some way. Even early teammates and advisors are a form of investor in my mind because they're investing their time and capabilities and skill sets with you. They're investing their time ultimately, which is money. And as I always like to say, you can always make more money, you can't make more time. So it's just as much of an investment. So, being able to show them how you have a plan, that you have a plan at all, and even though it might change, that you have a plan that you're going to execute upon. A friend of mine named Jayesh Parmar, some of you might know him, former CEO of Picketic, exited to Eventbrite, has recently left Eventbrite. He taught me something a long time ago, which was something called DDTE, which is the ability to be, or the way to express that you are distinctive, disruptive, with a team that can execute. Since then, I've begun calling it almost the algorithm of success. And again, that's DDTE, so distinctive, disruptive, with a team that can execute. So it's showing and positioning how you have that and how you have that plan, how you have the team and how you're going to execute. It builds a lot of confidence and de-risks the opportunity. Now, a lot of people, there's a huge cliche, of course, in the market where people will say, you'll hear one person that says, well, I want to see, where's your hockey stick? What's the hockey stick to this? What is the graph? What's your XY axis to this? And then you'll hear some people say, I don't want to just see a hockey stick. It's too cliche. It's automatic. I think, and what I've discovered over the years is that usually it comes down to is It is what it is. If it's a hockey stick, it's a hockey stick. If it's not, it's not. If it looks like a roller coaster, that's okay. It doesn't really matter. What matters at the end is that you know how to quantify how you came to that decision. Whatever your projections are, based on your traction, how did you quantify and come to that decision? And so it's not about what it looks like, it's how you quantify it. And just always remember to be smart about your goals and about your projections, which is to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and trackable. So, just remember to be smart and have quantifiable, realistic goals and base your projections on that. I can't tell you how many times I've heard pitches. I know we had one late last year where a pitcher came in and was like, yeah, I'm starting this business. I haven't started anything. I've got a landing page up and I'm developing interest. I'm having conversations and I'm going to start this. And in 18 months, I'm going to be doing $1 million in revenue. And everyone in the audience, the panelists, everybody was like, how did you come to that? And most people questioned it. Now, if that pitcher had somehow quantified it a bit better, instead of just saying, I'm going to do this, maybe it'd be more realistic, but it didn't seem realistic in the way that was positioned because there was no quantification to it. Now, it's possible that even if they had quantified, it still wouldn't seem realistic, but it would at least do a better job of doing so. So always make sure that this is quantified no matter what it is. So if it is a hockey stick, that's fine. It's a hockey stick. Just make sure that you quantify how you came to that conclusion. And obviously, another thing that really helps, again, is having some sort of graphics. So again, a timeline. So what is the timeline of what you're going to achieve and how is it realistic? So what does it cost you or how are you going to get there? What is that milestones and the important milestones to get you there? And how does that timeline match up with projections? So a lot of times I'll see projections, but then it doesn't really match up with the timeline, or there's no marked milestones to show like how the quantification matches up with the projections. So what do you want to achieve in the next 1 to 2 years? Projections may go up to 3 to 5 years. What I will tell you is some people believe that there has to be this 5-year projection thing. What I find more often than not is that you can get away with 2 to 3 years, 3 years being very common, because especially if you're an early stage startup, we don't have crystal balls. There's no way for us to know. It's all just a guessing game anyway. So to the best of your ability, if you can do 3-year projections and quantify it, that is fine. If you're actually in an investor conversation, if you're in due diligence, that's a bit different. They're going to ask for 5-year projections, most likely. They're going to ask for a lot more thorough. But again, we're talking about a pitch and presentation. We're talking about that we want to show them that you have a plan and that you know what you're talking about. So that comes along with what I call the golden rule, or my business partner actually says this, which is show, don't tell. And one of the things that I want to state here is where this is really important, and kind of what I'm saying is it's a great opportunity to show these things up on the slides. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to read off your slides or anything like that. One of the things I want everybody to remember when they're presenting is that you are the star of the show. The deck is your supporting actor. So it is there to support you with visuals, with bolded words, context, showing what you're talking about. So you are the star of the show in these cases. In a virtual world, that's even more the case because people have even higher tendency to just read the slides or look at the slides instead of looking at you. And then you lose that opportunity for connection. So, try to show, don't tell. So some top mistakes that I see is not having your deck as your supporting actor. So top mistakes is, number 1, a lot of text on the slides. Try to reduce the amount of text as much as possible in a pitch and presentation scenario. It's different if you're sending the presentation to somebody. that's different. But if you're doing a pitch with a presentation, and you should always have some form of presentation, then your deck is your supporting actor. Don't have too much text. Use visuals that are relative to what you're talking about. Use visuals that people are going to remember or are memorable to what you're talking about. And try to keep it clean. I see a lot of people that try to use dark slides with light text and a bunch of different visuals. Just keep it as clean as possible. You don't have to have it too complex, because ultimately the challenge that's also going to come down is if people are reading your slides, they're not listening to you. Most people can't do both at the same time. So you want them to hear what you're saying, not just reading the slides. Don't forget the other one is the forgotten barriers. So a lot of it is a barrier in your own mind. Don't let your own mind get in your own way. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to show your projections if you've quantified them. Don't be worried about those barriers. And another one is if you're pitching and presenting, you need to show that you're coachable. And then there's some simple ways to do this. I've seen all too often where, a large part of it is an investor wants to invest because they know that they can coach the founder. They know that they can help them in some way. And so doing things like not even taking notes when they're giving you feedback is basically showing that you're not really listening or paying attention. It shows a lot of ego. And you have to be really careful with that, because a lot of investors, if they get a sense that you're uncoachable, it doesn't matter how good your opportunity is, then sometimes they won't even consider it, because that in and of itself is too high of a risk. Because if you're not coachable, then you won't adjust. You're not agile enough either to be able to meet your customer or help your customers or scale and grow. And never, ever, ever apologize for going over. Don't make excuses for going over time. We hear this a lot. We used to do 90-second pitch events. Now they're 3 minutes. And I've heard people do their pitch in 90 seconds. I've heard people do their pitch in 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. Honestly, when it gets up to 10, 15, it's actually almost too much. The reality is you do have enough time. Again, it's about structure. It's about flow. It's about practicing it out. And getting practical experience and feedback before you're going in to pitch competitions, for example. Just some quick tips during an economic downturn. Just remember that investors want to see demonstrated persistence and perseverance. So that's one of the major things that they're definitely looking for right now, is how are you thinking about the economic downturn? How are you thinking about these situations? How are you adjusting your messaging, your repackaging your services, your product? How are you repositioning in times like these? Are you even having to? Maybe we have a brand new client we're working now with on their investor readiness, and it turns out for them it's actually been a boon for them, and their sales are way up as a result. So how can you position that? Definitely knowing your economics, again, proof over promise, and making sure that you understand your cost base, your unit economics, and all that kind of stuff, and being able to explain it in plain language. Showing that you have a plan and that you know how you're going to weather the storm. I know we might not all know exactly, but that you are thinking about it, that you're planning on it, that you're finding ways to save costs, save money, and position yourself through the storm. Again, it is a storm. If you're the ship, you can get through the storm. You just got to find your way, and you need to put your boat in the right direction. And the most common thing we're hearing in every conversation we're having with investors and people all over the world is that relationships have always been, but are more important than ever in a situation like this, because relationships are what are going to help you find new opportunities, build on those opportunities. So things like being able to go back to existing customers and maybe find ways of adding more value with them, building more key relationships, and using this time, potential downtime, to even build on those relationships and find more opportunities as a result. So to recap, again, pitching is an opportunity to generate intrigue and secure the next conversation. It's 3 parts: mindset, story, and structure. All make for an incredible pitch and presentation. Way better than just having a scripted, robotic pitch and presentation. So with that, I thank you all for your attention. I hope that this helps a lot. Again, you have access to the slides in many different formats, as Michaela has said. If anyone is interested in reaching out and connecting, my name again is Paul Broussard, managing partner, lead advisor, and co-founder of Volition. We help to elevate entrepreneurs. So we're happy to do that however we can. So please do feel free to reach out, Paul at volitionadvisors.com. You can go to volitionadvisors.com/events for our future masterclasses and upcoming pitch events. We are looking for more applicants for our global pitch event coming up on the 17th, as well as Women Pitch Canada on the 30th as celebration for Canada Day. And for anyone who is interested, if you have a pitch that you'd like to get feedback on, we have a special promo code essentially on one of the perfect sessions to book with me if you'd like. It's $99 for 30 minutes. And essentially you pitch me and I pitch you your pitch back to you, but in my style with my experience. So it's a great learning opportunity to see how a master would do it, so to speak. So if you're interested in booking that, you can go to my Pick My Brain profile, which is linked there. And please, 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 I would love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just put a quick message in there that you were part of the NVBC Masterclass, and I will happily accept your connection request. So with that, thank you very much. Hope you learned a lot, and I look forward to seeing you at pitch events in the near future. All the best.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We have 2 questions. Do you have time to take them, or do you gotta run?
Yep.
Okay. So
Oh, sorry, Michaela. Maybe we should just say we'll do questions. Sorry, it's Angie speaking. We'll do questions, but if anyone wants to drop off, feel free to go ahead, since we are over time and we generally like to finish everything on time. But for anyone who wants to stay, please do. We'll go through the questions, but otherwise, thank you very much for joining us. And we'll be posting all upcoming events on our website, newventuresbc.com. So thanks, everyone.
All right. So the first question is, I'm curious to know how important slides are in a 3-minute pitch. Should they be images only and no text, or 3 minutes is short? And so what do you think? Should we include images or no?
I heard kind of 2 questions, maybe even 3 there. But in summary, the easy answer is yes. Absolutely, yes, you should have slides. 3 minutes is more than enough. I would even say on a 90-second or 2-minute pitch, you should still even have slides. For example, our friends, our mutual partners over at Vantech, their preview pitches are 90 seconds. I can tell you right now, that's the preview pitch. If you're going to want to be considered to get to the next stage, which is the full 5-minute, 5 or 7, I can't remember now. Anyways, the longer full pitch, to even get considered, you're going to have some slides, something to support what you're talking about. Again, as I was mentioning before, your deck is your supporting actor. So ultimately, you want to have visuals and text that support what you're saying. So you'll even see kind of in the deck that I had for today, I used very little text. I did more of the speaking over text. I often try to think of it as the text that you use think of it as images. So how is there a particular word or a sentence that you're going to be talking about that you really want them to remember, right? So if it's, I'll give you an example of, look, we've received, or we've got 30 customers over the last 3 months. Having just that up on a slide, and maybe if you have logos of your customers, if you're allowed to put them, that can be a very powerful slide, right? So just keep it super simple, really clean. But the answer ultimately is yes, you should definitely, absolutely, 100% have slides.
Okay, awesome. So another question, what are some of the best practices to be prepared for the Q&A portion of a live pitch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the best practices. So there's a bit of a strategy to this, and it's something that I teach. And so ultimately, there's a couple of different methodologies. So one that I teach a lot of my clients is we'll strategically even come up with things that we'll purposely leave out, and know that they're going to ask those questions. And then we'll have supplemental slides ready for when those questions come up, because we know that that they're going to ask them. That's one way. And then the other way is that I would definitely recommend, once you've got your pitch and presentation ready, I would highly recommend, I think, even whether it's our pitch event or somebody else's or whatever, finding some way of getting practical experience and feedback on your pitch and presentation. And actually, I've almost found that there's almost sometimes nothing more powerful than pitching to people that don't really know what you're doing, if you can, and having them ask you questions, because they're more objective, and they're going to have less of a chance of understanding it possibly. And so the goal is, of course, to help them understand what it is you are doing. And so they're going to ask some very interesting questions. So sometimes they'll ask you things you didn't even think about. And then, of course, finding people that, professionals like myself or somebody else that can also give you critical feedback on things that are going to be asked. So, a great example of that might be like if you go through basic projections or money modeling in your pitch and presentation, and of course, depending on the length, right? So if it's a shorter pitch, you might not be able to go into depth, but then having it already pre-set up in your supplemental and for the QA, that you can probably assume somebody might say, yeah, you mentioned that you've got 10 customers in this amount of time and it's bringing you this much revenue, and you see that getting up to this in the next 2 years. Can you tell me a bit more about that? You can kind of inherently know that that's probably going to be one of the questions asked, so you can be prepared for it. I think that answers the question.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, we'll take one last question. So what if you're pitching, what if the people you are pitching to don't understand or believe in the problem you are solving? How do you avoid spending time convincing them?
Oh, that is a good and tough question. And there's kind of two sides to that. I would never want to make anybody feel bad about what they're doing. The one side is that maybe they're right, and I don't want to make anybody feel bad again. Maybe it's how you've told it. So maybe just be repositioning. Again, in the masterclass, I mentioned, anything you can do to validate the problem. So, I've talked to this many people. We've already got this many people signed up to a list of interest. We've got letters of interest. We've got something to validate that other people agree that this is a problem. Then no matter what the audience thinks, you've already validated it. So it doesn't really matter. And then if they still say it, it just might be how you're positioning it or how you're talking about it. And that's why I say it's always really powerful if you can position it in a story, right? So one day I was doing a thing, this happened, and then I found that this was a problem. And I talked to other people, found out it was a problem for them as well. Yeah, and like I said, the other side of it is unfortunately, not every idea is valid. It might not be a big enough thing, or it might not be a problem that people really think is a real problem, and that's where the validation key really comes in. Or it might mean that you just need to do more testing or working on your language. But I think that's why it's so important to get out there and have those conversations, get some practical pitch experience. As Angie mentioned, we do our pitch events as well. And you know, we're very happy to be involved in that process and help people improve. And whether it's our event, like I said, our event or somebody else's, but getting that practical experience and feedback, and listening, ask questions, right? Actively listen and hear what people are telling you, because it's possibly, and more often than not, just that they just didn't get it or you didn't validate it enough.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. This has been great. And thanks again for everyone joining us today. If you could take a quick 30 seconds to fill out the survey I just sent you, that would be most appreciated. But have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
And yeah, one quick thank you from me as well, and thanks to the NVBC team for making this happen and letting me take part. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Paul. Bye.